culture, gender, sexuality, tradition, business, and so much more. Hi, I'm Regina Gershman.
And I'm Dr. Sam Dubé. Together, we're going to take you on an extraordinary journey with engaging people from around the world, starting from right here in Ottawa, the capital of Canada. I'm here, Dr. Sam Dubé, and it's a privilege and an honor to have with us today mighty Marni Kinrys, otherwise known as your personal wing girl. So Marni is the author of a couple of books, including, I love these titles, by the way, Get Inside Her, The Female Perspective. Mm-hmm. A bit provocative, I like that. As well as, I have another one here. I think it was called That's Not How Men Work.
Yes. Well, so that's for women. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. And you actually won some awards, which we could talk about another time. But Marni, you've been at this. You're an expert relationship and dating coach, and I checked out your website, and I'm actually familiar with your videos. You've been doing this for about 10 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, let's say 10 years.
Okay. Can you give us
longer than that? But yeah.
Longer than that. Okay. Can you give us a brief rundown of the Wing Girl method?
Yes. So I teach men, coach men, help men, however you want to categorize it, on how to understand women so they can attract, date, get, keep, whatever they wish with full integrity, the women that they want. I'm their wing girl.
Understood. I've heard you described as the sister every guy would want to have.
Yeah, or the best female friend that you don't really want to be with secretly that actually helps you get girls.
Right. So you talk about touching on women's emotions. You talking about distinguishing between what a woman says versus what she wants or truly means.
Yeah.
These are not neutral statements. So can you elaborate a little bit about those methods?
Well, it's really just decoding. So, listen, I'm a human being. You're a human being. I have no idea what goes on inside your head. You have no idea what goes on inside my head. We're different. We have different experiences, different backgrounds. Then put a gender gap between us. We're going to be even more confused about what that other person is going to think. And most often, women have a sense of how other women feel and think and the words that we use, whereas men have similarities as well. Because they're men, we're women. And you would have to be a fool to think that we're going to easily understand each other because we have all of these differences in place. So what I do is I help break down those barriers men can decode and understand. Not so they can take advantage of and manipulate, so that they can use that information to be smarter, more powerful, more in control of themselves, and more in control of the situation so that they understand what's going on in their interactions with women. Whether they want to flirt with them, whether they want to approach them, whether they want to talk to them, sleep with them, be in a relationship with, having, that extra little bit of help is extremely helpful overall.
So, I do want to get some other questions that I've pondered a little bit here, but just a stock question for you. How did you get interested in these kind of intergender dynamics, and what motivated you, and what were some of the problems that you witnessed that caused you to really want to get involved?
I've always been fascinated by human beings. And the truth is that I've always been extremely insecure, uncomfortable, and a complete overanalyzer of my own inside my brain. So once I stopped fixating on that, and I was able to focus on other individuals, which wasn't so healthy in the beginning, I realized that I had a special skill and tool that I was able to deliver information ego-free that was honest and helpful to the opposite sex or just the people in general. And I wasn't always concerned with giving them the information that made them feel good. I wanted to give them the information that was the most helpful for them so they could win in any situation they wanted to, again, without hurting somebody else in the process. And it's not like I was, 12 years old saying, I can't wait to be a wing girl and I want to study, gender dynamics when I'm older. I just loved psychology, and I happened to move to Los Angeles and I was working in PR. I had worked in the film and television industry back in Toronto. And I was working in PR and hating it. And I happened to go to a singles mixer at at a rabbi's house where people were not talking to each other. I just met my now husband a month earlier, so I was like, okay, I'm done. Don't like anybody here. And nobody was talking, so I started pulling men towards women, and I would start facilitating the conversation and give them little things to say and give them feedback on how the interactions were going. And when that night was complete, people were mingling, they were exchanging phone numbers, 2 people were making out that I had introduced. And so when I went home, I was like, oh, I want to do this. I want to do like PR, but for people, and I want to be a wing girl. And my roommate said, yeah, no, you're not going to be able to do that. Men don't care what women think. They definitely don't want help from a woman on getting girls. And I was like, I don't think you're right. So I posted an ad on Craigslist like 1 o'clock in the morning. And by the next day, I had over 75 guys who had responded to me. And I realized there was a real need for what I was doing. And it all just snowballed from there. It didn't start off as what my business is now. Originally, with me in person going out with you and picking up women for you. And then over time, I started to realize all the questions and confusions and frustrations that men were having that I did not know as a woman. All you think is, oh, he's not good at attracting. He's not good at approaching. He can't flirt. You don't realize everything psychological or all of the confusions and frustrations that are happening for the male gender. For a lot of men. And so I started hearing all of these things and realized that I had to start providing programs so that men can get this base down, and then they can pick up and attract women themselves, which moved me to the wing girl method system.
So I noticed that a lot of your material really has a foundation in these kind of intergender differences. And I'm a student of that, and I really do believe in that. And I've worked in education as well, where there's some fundamental differences. These are tendencies in the cognitive, I don't want to say abilities, but the cognitive challenges that boys and girls have.
Capabilities.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Capabilities.
Yeah.
And and John Gray talks about this in Men Are from Mars and Women from Venus. And so I've been a big proponent of this for some time. Now we do talk about genders being a spectrum now today as well. So that'd be an interesting question for you a little bit later. But what are some of the natural barriers that you see in communication between men and women? If you could just illustrate for our watchers and our listeners out there.
Oh gosh, so just so that people know, I am not a doctor, and I have not done scientific studies on all of this stuff.
No,
so a lot of the
experience.
Yeah, but a lot of what I say is coming from what I've researched and interviewed over 5,000 women from doing this. So just so people don't know, I'm not trying to give statistics out. So what have I noticed? I notice that men's interpretation of female actions is completely the opposite to what they actually are. But most of what I've noticed is very similar across both genders is this deep-rooted insecurity and lack of self-belief that then leads to that frustration and confusion. Because when we're in this state of being afraid or insecure or having bad beliefs about ourselves, we start to interpret things from that place, which tend to negative direction and tend to put us down. And that is very similar for both genders. So the biggest things that I've noticed for men that they have trouble with is they have trouble understanding the signs that women are giving, the signs that signal that I'm attracted. But most of the teaching that I teach, yes, I show them the basic signs that there is some level of attraction there or some interest. But what I have men focus on is the sign that's in their head that says, I'm in this girl. I want to approach her. I want to talk to her. I want to see if there's some spark, some attraction there. And that's what they need to notice. When they start focusing on their wants, then they can clear away all of this other baggage crap that falls, that ruins what happens for them. Then they can interact on a clear level, and then they can notice more signs about the attraction that they're seeing on the other side. Because when you're all clouded, you can't really see a lot of the things that are right in front of you. So my point is that most of the frustrations and confusions come from a more negative space for men. But even moving forward down the line when having conversations with women, if, for example, a guy's talking to a girl over online dating sites. And the girl is giving like simple responses back. She's delaying about 3 or 4 hours to respond back. He gives 4-sentence message asking questions, and she gives back another simple statement back. For me as a woman, I know that that means I'm not interested in being polite. For a man, to him that means, oh, she's responding. There's interest there. So I help men by being able to see where that difference is for them.
Why do you think there's this fundamental difference in communication between the genders or manifesting in the gender spectrum? Why do you
People are too afraid to say the honest truth. That's the only reason that there's this confusion. There's frustration and confusion, there's this miscommunication because people are going at communication with their own intents, right? And then they're failing to see what the other person is sub-communicating. And on top of that, people are afraid to directly and clearly communicate. So there's 3 levels of issues that are happening. And that's where I think it's a confusion. So somebody's going into a situation thinking, oh, I want to attract women. She has said that she matches with me. That means that she's interested. So in my brain, she is interested moving forward. Then I put information out to her and she responds. It's not nice information. It's not emotional information. It's not extra information. It's just a sentence back to me. But because my intention is, I like her, I'm attracted, she likes me, I think that means keep going. Am I making sense for you?
Yes.
Yes.
You are.
So I'm just, and then because she's not saying, listen, I'm not interested. Thank you very much. But she keeps responding back. That's her miscommunicating as well. But in her mind, she is thinking, I'm very clearly showing you that I'm not interested. I'm delaying my responses. I'm giving you no emotion whatsoever in the responses that I give you. And I'm not asking, please stop bothering me. So again, it's all this fear and lack of authentic, real communication.
Okay, let me be a bit more specific, Mighty Marni, because I've found that a lot of what you talk about to be very true. I've been out there decades, and there's a certain veracity and validity to the things that you're saying empirically for me. And I'm a student of evolutionary biology and psychology, and I think a lot of what you talk about is deeply rooted in that. I think that there are some fundamental differences in the way men and women and across the gender spectrum communicate because of the ways they think, because of hormones that can affect them. And so, for instance, John Gray talks about women being indirect and men are direct. And this is what I meant when I asked you about, like, do you feel that there's some fundamental differences there? Well, like, where do they come from exactly? Whereas a woman feels that she's being very obvious about signals, but men notoriously have problems. And you said it yourself, the fraction of men that can interpret women's signals is actually very small.
Yeah.
And they're to be prized, or maybe not prized, but they're rare. So, and I think it's because women have a lot more to lose, evolutionarily speaking, when you get down with a baby for 9 months and then have to care for them, and this is why, fathers can be so protective of their daughters and such, because historically women have so much more to lose. And then with the advent of birth control and pregnancy tests and other methods, that maybe has been pushed aside somewhat now more, but we're still those creatures. We're still those animals. Right?
Yeah, definitely. And to add on to that, so I'm watching the show The Great right now, which is about Catherine the Great. This is This is from a very, very long time ago. But women weren't allowed to have opinions. They weren't allowed to learn. They weren't allowed to speak. And so we did have to, in somewhat, become pleasers of people. So we had to smile to your face and hate you secretly to our girlfriends, or in complete shame with ourselves. So I think that there's a lot of that's still, from an evolutionary perspective, I think that's still in us in some way and slowly being shaken off, that we're allowed to have a voice. And I've heard so many stories of women saying, I was at a bar with this guy and I was talking with him and we were having a nice conversation. From my perspective, I wasn't flirting. From his perspective, I obviously was. And at the very end, he said, so are you together? And I said, oh no, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to lead you on. I'm not interested in you that way. And so, again, this is just one story of many. But she went outside and he punched her in the face. Yeah, so that's an extreme version of what can happen. But even from my own background, and like, I'm a very flirty, playful person. For me, I never thought that anything that I was putting out there was sexual. It was me having fun and being playful, and people were understanding what was happening on both sides. But that's bit me a few times where people have been a little bit more aggressive with me because they thought that I was putting something else out there. Oh, dear. So I think that that a lot of it is from our backgrounds of being built in to be polite and kind and nice and to not ruffle any feathers. I think that's where a lot of it comes from.
The key to a woman's heart being through her emotions. Can you comment a little bit about that and contrast it with how men think a little bit?
Yeah. Well, okay, so a very simple way to explain that is men write to me asking, how do I compliment a woman, right? And so they'll always say, oh, your eyes are nice, you're pretty. Those are very surface level things that, I mean, she's probably heard a million times before, and she probably knows herself. The way to actually compliment a woman is to go 3 steps deeper, to compliment her on something that is unique and special to her, that shows you that you see her, which goes hand in hand with what I was just talking before, where women were meant to be polite and kind and put on this facade a little bit that we're wonderful. And when you can see something that's deeper, which is the emotional part, who is calling me? From British Columbia. All these Canadians are calling you.
It's not an emergency.
It's crazy. Sorry about that. And so when you can go that level deeper and see something, that's when you can connect more to our core and to our emotions, because we feel like we've seen, and there's something unique and special that you see in us that other people don't. So for example, if you're having a conversation with a woman, you can say, God, your eyes are so beautiful, but you know what's even more attractive is your heart. I wouldn't have known this an hour ago, but you are a very kind person. And that is a huge thing to a woman, saying, I see you. I see you. You don't have to do that all the time, but like, to be around a man who sees you, oh my God, that's like our addiction juice. It's absolutely insane. Because then you're like, oh, I don't have to be this fake me. You can see what I have inside. Like, it's just the most amazing feeling in the world.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And, you know, it's interesting because you talk about this hitting the emotions, but how much does that initial visceral response play into attraction? You know, you often hear men complain that, oh, you know, I'm not some tall, dark, handsome guy, and like she fell in love with him right away, and it didn't matter what he did, she was going to stay with him, sort of thing. So how much, because you talk a lot about women falling in love with men and their perceptions and their attention to her and the highs and lows of emotion and getting that kind of emotional, I can't remember what you call it exactly.
The roller coaster?
Yeah, that sort of thing. And, you know, and there's certainly some evidence for this in getting people to feel this. And men will unkindly often say, well, she wants drama. She wants drama. Right, and so that's often a male perspective or spin on what many women are looking for. But how much does that kind of initial visceral response, which may have pheromones come into play, may have her childhood and what she was attracted to as a young person, maybe a tall, dark man was kind to her once. Right. Do you know what I mean? The female psychology is so complex, right?
Yeah.
What do you have to say about that?
Well, I mean, there is something to just a visceral response to somebody, like just like a pure, like gut response to somebody that you see. For me, and for the women that I've interviewed, I know that this almost rarely happens, where there is just something in you where you look at another person and you are immediately attracted to them. What I find really interesting about myself and the women that I've interviewed is that most of them have these like ideals and expectations about what it is that they would be attracted to, but most of the reality of their situations, of the people that they select, is often the opposite to what their ideals are. I haven't met very many women who are like, I only like blonde guys who are super fit, who are this, and this, and then they end up with that guy. Most women actually have like a shifted view of what they're attracted to, like from what they actually end up with. So for me, when a guy comes in and approaches me, Yes, in the first 5 to 10 seconds, I'm looking at his face, I'm looking at how he dresses, I'm looking at like the whole energy that his body emits to me, whatever you want to call it. And then he opens his mouth. And sometimes a man's face can literally morph in front of me. It's crazy where I feel different around him. Like, I see him differently, and I feel something different for him. I don't know how to explain it. You have the science behind it to explain that phenomenon, but there is something in terms of, you know, what it does take to attract a woman. So Dan Buss's book, for example, The Evolution of Desire, I'm going to totally misquote this, but he found that there was like a list of 12 or 20 traits, whatever it was, that was universal for women around the world. Small tribes in Africa, New York, Israel, like all over the world, of things that they were attracted to. Looks were not number one. Looks were a part of those traits that can create attraction. And then attraction can be defined on so many different levels. There is this guttural response of attraction of me. When I see people that are physically attractive, but I don't want to be with them, I think they're very good looking, but they're not somebody that I actually want to engage with. There can be so many different spectrums of the definition of attraction. And I'm like explaining in a very broad way, but I'm trying to give you as clear an answer as I can.
No, and I think that's a great answer. You know, among men, you often hear that frustration, like, oh, look at her dating profile. She's listing 20 things that she wants, but then she ended up going out with some guy that doesn't fit any of that. You know?
Yeah.
And, you often hear that refrain among men. It's like, what is she looking for? And so that's why I think a lot of what you do and say resonates with men when you say what women are really wanting and thinking. And we also have a saying that the medium is the message. Don't necessarily look at the exact words. Look at how it's delivered, the body language, the emotion, the intent, your facial expression. You know, classic. Is something wrong, dear? Nothing. And it's like, oh yeah, something's wrong, all right. You know, a lot
exactly.
Of okay,
don't listen to the words. And I have children now, so I have learned that is so true. It's like even the words that I deliver to my children, tonality matters, the way that I'm expressing it, my body, like all of these things come into play with how they're receiving that information. And so, you know, people don't understand that, especially if they're in this space of fear of rejection. They can't understand that there's so many different components. So the majority of the work that I do, or half the work that I do with men, is I explain how women work and what they're really saying when they're saying something else, and then give them the skill sets and the tools that they need to create attraction. The other half is really helping them get into a calm, confident headspace where they can feel like they're getting to select the women that they want to pull into their lives.
Right. I noticed that, you know, among myself and friends, the most successful that we've been with relationships has been when you least expect it, and you're in a good headspace yourself. When you have your self-esteem is high, when you're feeling you're on a path to success. Men tend, you know, we like to think we're creators and conquerors of worlds. You know what I mean? So, like, I found that I'm the most successful and the most, you know, quote unquote myself when I am happiest with what I'm doing. And for me, this is hard because a lot of your methodology, you know, you talk about you should do this and think this and act this. Do you feel that being natural at it gives you an advantage? Are things that you recommend something that should happen naturally, or
I don't think anything should happen naturally.
Right. Okay.
Like, because that puts too much pressure on other people if it's not happening naturally for them. And so I believe that everything can be learned. Once you have more information, once you see an example of it, once you learn the steps to do things, I think there's a lot of people who can naturally do something better than others. But even those people may need help in that area to achieve more, to get to a level that's higher than where they are right now. So I think that those phrases can hurt a lot of people. Because I have a lot of men who write in and you can tell that there's so much shame. I should naturally be able to do that. Why should you naturally be able to do that? Who taught you? Why should you be natural? Because you're a man, because you have a penis? Does that mean you're supposed to be able to just do these things? No. What you should be able to do, and what you naturally should be able to do, is request help and receive answers.
And you know it's difficult for a lot of men, especially to request help.
Oh my gosh. Yes, of course.
Directions and such too, because it's seen as vulnerability. I personally think that back in the old days, if men showed vulnerability, it made them susceptible to attack. And so I think it's a natural tendency for them not to want to show this vulnerability, and that can extend to their relationships as well with their significant others. You use the words like seduce or get and stuff. What has been the reaction from the female community with regards to your material and your approach?
Oh, women love me. Okay. So in the beginning, when I first started doing this, I was in the pickup artist. So anybody who was like on my marketing team was like, use these words like women hate that I'm revealing these secrets. And I was like, I don't know any woman that's hating what I'm doing. Every woman seems to be fascinated by what I'm doing and then tells me 4 things that I should be explaining to men. So a lot of my marketing in the past was saying that women were very unhappy with me, but it's very opposite. Women are ecstatic about what I'm revealing to men, especially married women. So when I went home to Toronto, when I first started my business, this was like a year and a half after I started my business, but like my first trip home to Toronto, and I went to a dinner party at my friend's house, and there was a whole bunch of my female friends there with their husbands, and as soon as I started talking about what I was doing, every wife started tapping their husband's shoulder and said, listen. Like I was delivering information that they wanted their husbands to hear. And I think it's the same for women who are single right now. Want men to know these things so that they can get better results. It helps both sides. And same things vice versa. There's a million things that I would love to tell women that I have told my female friends, and I did create that program called That's Not How Men Work. So a lot of men get upset, like, okay, why are you saying this to women? Why is it our responsibility? It's because I'm coaching men. That's why I'm speaking to you. But if I were to coach women, I would have a million things to say to them as well about understanding the men that they're trying to interact with, because I think it's just so important.
I do too. Do you think there's a bit of a double standard? So case in point, there was actually a pickup artist who got banned from Australia, right, a number of years ago, and it made the headlines and everything. And, he got a lot of press, and he ended up apologizing. But when you look at the methods, he too was talking about decoding signals and in acting in ways that may be more in keeping with the so-called natural tendency, or the ability to react in a way that's more constructive, and to understand the genders different, to understand them in a more natural way. And boy, he got crucified. He got crucified big time. So do you find that there's a different reception to you being a woman, or was he really deserving of everything that was thrown at him?
There was a lot of videos that showed him being quite chauvinistic and objective to women. So that's where the difference was. It was Julian, whatever his name was. I don't really know much about what.
How much of that was marketing?
It was all marketing. Most people who were pickup artists before, when you actually took their courses or got into their programs, most of it was about becoming a better man. It was not about taking advantage of women. There were some men who did. There were some men who were in that community who hated women and wanted to punish them for any pain that they had in the past, for sure. I don't believe that Julian was like that. But he was also really young, and he liked to sleep with a lot of girls. And so even if it is his marketing, that small portion of his marketing was wrong and used women as pawns and showed that he was trying to manipulate women to sleep with him. And so I don't think that it was bad that he had to take some of that stuff down, because those are bad messages to pass on to people. The thing is that some people who don't take his programs or don't take the programs to learn more about how to be a better man overall just see this behavior and then try to replicate it. And they do it wrong, and then they get in trouble. And then women get this message that there's all these like sleazeballs out there trying to just like get into their pants. And so that's what I think needed to end, and that's why those things had to come down.
No, and especially the RSD people, it's exactly what you said. I've never attended any of their programs, but the impression I got from listening to some of the videos was about self-improvement and about, that's why I asked you about, doing these things naturally, because they really, really did push that ultimately in the end. But the way they went about the advertisement, sometimes you hear snippets and things, and it's, very chauvinistic and almost misogynistic in character. But,
the reason I remember when I first started doing this, started doing this like 15 years ago now, and the people that were doing the copywriting for sales letters for pickup artists, they said, you can't tell them up front, I'm going to teach you how to be more confident and be a better man. Because that's not what they want.
That's not what they came here for.
Sell them. I know, but then it's horrible because it's like dumbing down the male population. But at that time, that's what the desires were that were out there that got them in to make a purchase. And then they got to learn about being a more well-rounded, confident man who could then select the women that they want into their lives. And I'd say 90% of the guys teaching that stuff were teaching how to do it with high integrity. And especially now, I would say, I don't even know who is teaching it from a negative perspective, but most of the coaches for men out there now are about, authentic, genuine, be a vulnerable man, only good messages about how they treat women.
Right, and not only was it kind of dumbing down and disempowering of men, but also of women, because when you're saying that, now, women are going to be affected by all these pickup artists and they're going to be victim to these techniques, these secret techniques that are going to, destroy our ability to, relate properly to men. And, you talk also about, I hesitate to use the word victimize, but it's like removing women's agency. It's like saying, now, we're victims of PUAs. To me, that removed women's agency. What, a woman is so easily affected? Maybe lied to, but, everybody lies. Like not everybody, but you know what I mean? It's a huge problem. It's not just a male versus female problem. I have lots of friends who women have lied to, over the years.
Yeah.
And, so that bothered me too. But you also...
I feel the same way as you. I agree.
You won some awards. You've been called the best female pickup artist by PUA associations. And how does that feel? Like how did that affect you in your business?
Oh, well, that was actually a very long time ago. But at that time, it felt great. As I said, 90% of the people that were in that community at the time that I was doing it were amazing men who were trying to teach good to other men. The coaches were also quite insecure themselves, and they were coming at it from a really good place. And me being the first woman run business to be welcomed into that world. And then I got an award for the female PUA, and I think there was like 2 female PUAs at the time. But to even just be acknowledged in that way was a big deal, that they were saying, okay, this is great. Women are in our space now, and we're gonna celebrate you and not bash you. I thought that was wonderful. And for me, as a new business, when I had first received that award, it felt amazing because it meant that I was adding some value that men weren't hearing before. A different perspective, or a unique perspective, or maybe the same perspective said in a different way, that they applauded. And that felt great.
Marni, can you talk a little bit to some of your most memorable situations where you helped out men, specific or generalized? It's up to you.
Oh God, every single day. The most memorable one was this guy named Sharif, who lives in Dubai or I totally forgot where
not being used. Real name's not being used.
Oh yeah, sorry. But he's married now with children, and he came to Los Angeles, and I met them. It was wonderful. But so I just loved working with him. I gave him advice, and it was about getting out of the friend zone with this woman who he worked with. And I had given him some advice, and I said, don't do this, this, and this. But he wrote me back the next day, and he said, I know you said not to do this, but I went into her office, and I told her how I felt, and I was very clear and very bold and very firm with what I was thinking. And she looked back at me, and she said, you sound so American right now. And like that, but then he got his response. He had been for this woman for 2 years, going back and forth, and he got a tangible response from her, a response that set him free so that he could open himself up to others. And within months, he had met his wife, now wife. And so that was really memorable to me, that he was just like in this like really distraught place when I met him. And now, even when I talk to him now, because he checks in with me every year, he is just like so calm and collected and centered and like just so in his skin and in his being as a man and as a person. It's incredible for me. So he's somebody that really stands out. And I would say that most of the men that I work with have very similar stories. It's like they set themselves free from this bondage, this self-given bondage, where they are just like, oh, I can make a choice. Oh, I can go for what I want. Oh, I can ask for what I want. I may not receive it, but I can ask. So I think, I just love hearing those stories from men and from women who also have those experiences where they're suddenly feeling like they can be themselves and have the things they want in their lives.
Yes, and that's a part of your material is you talk about men needing to say, I want, and be direct, and that sometimes women are just waiting for a man to say what he wants. But in this day and age, it's often difficult because, men are trying to be gentlemen and respectful and nice, and then there's the distinction between being really nice and being nice with an agenda, right, in order to get what they want, so to speak. Right. But, you also talk about women being attracted to leadership. And you talk about creating your community as a sign of leadership. And I really like that. That really resonated. Having a social circle, creating your life, and that's attractive. Nothing's more attractive than a man with a positive social life, But what advice would you give to women who are hearing this, and it sounds like, men have to do all the work and everything? Is there anything that women can do subtly to encourage the men? I mean, men are notoriously bad at reading signals. Men are notoriously bad at understanding women and their true desires.
They cannot be so darn subtle. That's what I tell women to do. That's my whole program. That's not how men work. Like I say, help a brother out. They don't read the subtle signals, so stop being so subtle. If you're interested in a man, look at him, smile, say, come over here. Like, you can help him out by not being so shut off yourself. But most often, women aren't being shut off because they're trying to, be, I don't know what I can say here, but like BITCHs. They're doing it because they're uncomfortable, they're insecure, or they've heard it's not very attractive to be the aggressor. So sit back and be the woman and let him come over to you. Men like it when you're subtle. That's sexy. So there's a lot of attention given to women as well. So I tell women, help a brother out, but do it in a very feminine way. So if you're on a date with a guy and he's talking, don't assume that he is an egotistical jerk who just wants to talk about himself. Think for a second. Nervous. Maybe he's trying to impress you. Maybe he's read 10 books on what women want, and he has all this conflicting information that's going through his head. So help a brother out. Put your hand on his forearm, or maybe not right now during COVID, but in some way, look at him and smile to signal, I'm here too, and I'm in this. Or even say out loud, I'm having a really good time with you right now. That's very female, very feminine to say, and then he can calm down.
But how do women react to that advice? Because in my experience, they often don't realize they're being super subtle. And I've tried to set up friends with friends, and the woman becomes even more subtle, like, or does something that she thinks is being extremely overt. And I'm like, that was so totally inconspicuous. I don't know how you ever expected him to see that. You know what I mean? And I'll just end up putting one hand on the other and going, go for it, So how do women react to your advice?
It depends on who it is, and it depends how confident they are in themselves. So most women will say, oh, wow, I didn't even realize that I was doing that, or I didn't realize that was the message that I was giving to men. I was meaning the complete opposite. So most women are pretty thankful for that information. Some women are still going to be uncomfortable with it because it doesn't feel right, or it feels scary, or it feels weird to be that non-subtle and that overt. Or that overt. So I can't help anybody who doesn't want to be helped, right? But most women are extremely open to that feedback, as long as I'm not shaming them or telling them to be the complete male aggressor and the alpha. They're totally fine with it.
Right. So can you give us an example of one of your most recent cases? and how it hit home for you.
Oh God. Okay. So,
I'm trying to constrain the time on you because I know you have thousands, so try and narrow it down.
Well, so this one guy who is actually coming onto my Facebook Live on Thursday, who, to be honest, I was so annoyed with his emails at first. He was an email coaching client that turned into a phone coaching client, because they were just like, over the top and flowery, and I was like, this is just too much, and we had to work on that for sure. But there was just so many like strange beliefs implanted in him that he wasn't allowed to do certain things, or that he couldn't be X, Y, and Z, or that he wasn't attractive and he wasn't sexy, even though he's like a bodybuilder who works on his physique. That's his job. Like, so this man, Michael is his name. He's gonna be on my Facebook Live. I can say his name. Who has just suddenly now allowed himself to do all the things that he wasn't allowed to do for his entire life. And he's having women approaching him. He is chatting up strangers wherever he goes. And now doing this in California, doing it during COVID. So his like pickup spot now is Ralph's. Ralph's is our grocery store. And like every time he writes me saying, again, at Ralph's, like where he's just chatting up people, where you would think now everybody's off limits. It's not like that. People are craving interaction. And he is just offering that to people. He's opening himself up and inviting people into his world. And that's where I want guys to get. Instead of men trying to like jump into this woman's world and figure out what she wants and figure out how to get her, it's actually about men sitting back and saying like, I'm X, Y, and really comfortable with myself. Why don't you come into my world? I'll show you what it's like in here, because in here is pretty awesome. And he's been able to do that. So now he sends me those same flowery emails that were, riddled with self-loathing and depression. Now it's all about how there's a light inside him that's suddenly been turned on. He tells me story after story about his interactions with women, and he's just, I don't know, he's just amazing. He doesn't annoy me anymore. I'm like, I get so excited when I see an email from him, because they're just like wonderful situations.
Oh, that's a fantastic story. And you can tell it has a lot of meaning for you, and you're really passionate about facilitating human relationships. You can really tell that about you, Marni. Yeah. I am going to use the word hate. I hate when people don't see their self-value. It boggles my mind. I mean, it shouldn't boggle my mind, because I, loathed myself for a very long period of time as well, not really knowing that I was doing that to myself, but I did. And it cut me off from so many people for a very long period of time. And so I worked my way through that. Actually, while doing my coaching, I got to see myself in a lot of my clients, and I worked my way through it. So now if I see these people that are just like living in this old belief about themselves, or in this skewed belief about themselves, all I want to do is shake them and help them figure out how to see things more positively so that they can let wonderful things into their lives. You mentioned COVID, and it's true, we're conducting this interview at the tail end. Things are starting to open up again, but what?
For you guys.
Guys, yeah, that's true, unfortunately. I'm sorry what's going on there in California. What advice do you have? I mean, you surely must have seen the constraints on human interaction, and this must have affected your business somewhat, but how do we deal with this? What are some...
You just got to get more creative. 85% of communication, and maybe that statistic is not right anymore, so people have said it's like 92, of communication is through anything but your words. Right? It's through your body language, your voice tonality, your facial gestures. You don't need your words. So you can cover up your mouth, and so many things can be expressed to another person without actually saying anything. So you got to get more creative. I actually think that COVID has been great for dating. I think that it is allowing us, if you are in the market to find somebody to be in a relationship with, it has allowed us to take our time and actually get to know somebody before investing time and energy on them. Because that's how it was before the internet existed, right? Now, okay, you're swiping right, somebody, or not now, but prior to COVID, you swipe right, you make a match, you talk for 2 seconds, you go out for a drink, all in the same evening. It can happen all really, really fast. You get really excited, you get wrapped up in the moment, and then you might get really wrapped up in this person who's just not good for you, and then you get hurt 3 weeks later because they disappear or they ghost you or whatever it is, and then you're burned, and then you carry that burn to your next interaction with somebody else, and then you pass on the burn. Anyway, my point is that you get to take more time to do your research. You get to talk with them on the phone. You get to do a FaceTime call, a Zoom call, whatever you want to do. You have a virtual date. You have a social distancing date before you sleep with them, before you kiss them, I'm just saying that it allows you more time to select the right person for you without all of the other things getting in the way to distract you. That could potentially distract you. So I don't see it as being a negative at all. It's an obstacle, but if you can get more creative with it, as I said, it can be very helpful.
You know, a lot of people have resorted more to texting or maybe FaceTime and Skype, but how do you feel about texting personally? I've seen some of your material about it, but in terms of getting to know someone.
I think getting to know somebody does not happen over text. You can definitely, there can be some attraction that is built over text, for sure. You can banter back and forth, but you don't really get to know people over text. Texting is for setting up plans and arranging to meet so that you can get to know them. But between those dates, you can definitely build upon what you've established in real life to create more excitement to get to the next meeting.
You, one of your videos, you talk about, 5 things having to do with physical appearance and grooming that a man can do to instantly increase his attraction. So how would that apply to, say, for instance, we're Skyping today.
Yeah.
What can guys do to deal with Skyping or Zooming or FaceTime and improve their chances?
Okay, so they make sure that they have a great background. So like some guys I've seen, right? Yeah. But like some guys I've seen will not have a good background. They'll have like their open dirty closet behind them while they're doing a Zoom call, or they'll have stuff on the floor or food out everywhere. Right, exactly. Remove the dead bodies behind you. Okay, then you want to have good lighting, and I tried to set up a good camera for this, so I have this great Logitech camera.
Ooh, I got one too. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're wonderful. I couldn't get to hook up, but it makes your face look better, and you have to research angles. Like right now, I don't think I'm at the best angle, and I totally forgot to put my light on. But there's a million things that you can do to improve the visual that you're giving to a woman. You can also make sure that everything from the waist up is put together. You can have your pajamas on underneath. You can have no pants on underneath if you want. But that's all that you need to do. Just to you're giving a visual to people, right? So you wanna look good.
Exactly. Anything else along those lines? So body language, tone of voice, anything like that?
Body language, tone of voice, yes. So have good body language. Be as open as you can be.
What is good body language, Marni? What is good body language?
Okay.
What's the tone of voice?
So this is not good body language. That closed up. Anything closed is not good.
Why not?
Yeah, it's horrible. Anytime where you're like darting your eyes back and forth and not looking at the person. So you want to open up your body language, even if you want, like, this is a good move too. You want to be comfortable. And then when she says something of interest, you lean forward to show that you're listening, nod your head. Voice tonality, you want to speak from your diaphragm. And if you do want to start flirting a little bit, you can change up your voice so that you're a little softer, a little slower, have your eye contact facing forward. So there's a lot that you can do. Yeah. So you could be saying, oh, yeah, that's a very nice couch behind you, which that is not a sexual thing to say, but the way that I said it was.
Somewhat, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Marni, we're going to have to wrap this up pretty soon. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I would love the opportunity to interview you or discuss with you again. But are there any quick exercises that men can do?
Oh, yes. Exercises are my thing. So I have this program right now that's called The Insider, and it is all exercise. Like exercises. Oh, I know, but exercises are my thing. Like that's how I learn how to do things. So you talked about I want. So a simple exercise for people who are watching, male or female, is to say I want 5 times throughout the day. even if you don't have a strong opinion about things, I still want you to get into the habit of saying, I want. People ask you, what do you want for lunch? Oh, it's okay, whatever you guys want. No, I want you to say, give me a minute, let me think about this. I want Chinese food, whatever it is that you say. I want you to have a firm decision, and I want you to express it in a way that clearly states that you know who you are, you have wants, and you're going to express them, and that you're comfortable with it. It's going to feel really weird at first, but after the first few days of doing it, and you'll see people's reactions to you, you'll become more confident with it, and you'll realize it doesn't have the negative impact on others that you thought it did. It actually has a positive impact on them, to see you as somebody that can make a decision.
Wonderful, wonderful. At the risk of giving us all your material, anything else? Any other simple exercises?
There's so many.
But if you had to put it in like a top 3 or something, what would you do? Anything relevant to this less personal environment, the more COVID environment? Anything?
Okay, so an exercise is also to play around with your eyes, because right now, because we're covered from here, your eyes have to be more animated for you. So I would start playing some eye contact chicken with people, and then really focusing on what your eyes are saying to others. So for me, I went to Starbucks for the first time 3 weeks ago on Father's Day, because my husband really wanted a Starbucks. So I got him a Starbucks, freaked out the entire time that I was in there. But anyway, so I realized with my mask on, they couldn't hear what I was saying, and they couldn't tell if I was smiling. And so I had to work extra hard to work my eye muscles to show that I was smiling. And so as an exercise to people watching, I would do the same thing so that people can understand the expressions that are happening on the bottom portion of your face, that they have to, have some good eye game and play around with their eyes a little bit.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, because I was on a patio not long ago with a buddy of mine, and I made a sarcastic comment, like us Canadians often do, and I couldn't tell if the waiter got the joke because his eyes didn't move much, and he was completely covered otherwise. So I was like, did you find that funny? He goes, oh yeah, no, really, I'm laughing inside. And
but that's the thing. But then there's some people who mask off, they still have that expression. So it's like looking at your resting face, that's the thing that we were talking about being subtle before. Help everybody out. Show what you're thinking on the outside. Express it with your words, express it with your face, and that helps other people understand where you're coming from.
I do have another question for you, Marni, and it has to do with multicultural dating. So I'm the product of an intercultural, interracial marriage. My mother is from China, and my father is a 12th generation French Canadian, and I grew up in both cultures. It's interesting to say this, but something like that's very Canadian in a way. Do you know what I mean? Like we're a mosaic, and we have all these cultures together, and so I'm proud of that. But what are your first thoughts when I mention the words multicultural dating to you?
That just means dating people from around the world.
That's challenges, any particular, with women reading men, is there a cultural overlay to this interpretation of the gender languages?
Oh, that's interesting. Is this other channel that's on YouTube that does this whole thing where they have women from around the world, and they say, like, you're dating an Italian girl when you're dating so I haven't studied across those platforms, like, to just have a better understanding of that. I have interviewed women from places around the world, and most of the things that I do find are quite similar. But there's little nuances. There's different, social etiquettes that need to be put into place. And sometimes when I do have clients who are writing to me from Spain or from the Middle East, I'll always say, take my advice with a grain of salt. These are the things that women are attracted to, but you have to also know where you're living and what is appropriate and not appropriate. So you have to be the moral compass for your own social etiquette.
Yeah, blame money when you're in jail, right?
Right. Yeah. But what you were saying before about, cultures mixing, my husband, so I'm Canadian, I'm Jewish, I'm born in the 80s. He is born in the 70s. He's Catholic. He is born in Chicago, so he's American. We have a lot of cultural differences and a lot of differences in general that are quite challenging. And So it does cause some tension in our house.
Like
we
what?
all happen to have a lot of things in common.
You want to hear it?
Just different views of the world about certain things, like Republican, Democrat, right? Like, I don't fully get that, even though I've been here for 10 plus years. I'm Canadian. So our conservatives are like a moderate, like, in America. Like, it's just, I don't have that same upbringing to understand that extreme difference. And so when I am giving my opinion or whatever, it's a Canadian point of view, or it's a Canadian opinion, whereas he's giving his, it just gets a little skewed sometimes. And then generational, there are differences of, things that we grew up on, obviously, but just, again, like, sometimes I think he's a bit of a fuddy-duddy because he's just so archaic in the way that he sees some things, and I'm definitely more bright-eyed, and I feel like a little more youthful in my perspective. But they're also kind of fun things for us. But they can be challenges for a lot of people. I remember when I first moved to Los Angeles, and I had gone to that rabbi's house for the singles mixer, and I was friendly with a lot of people that were in the Orthodox community. I'm not Orthodox at all, but they had said to me, they're like, you have to marry somebody Jewish. It just creates less differences, and your relationship easier. And I always think back to that because I'm like, maybe it would be easier sometimes, but it would be a lot more boring. That's why I moved away from my community that was like that in Toronto, and I was attracted to somebody that was so different. I like the challenges. I like to figure out people. So for me, that has been more beneficial. Challenging, yes, but I like it more.
So accept the challenge.
Yes. Winded answer for a short question, but yes.
No, that was wonderful. We're going to have to wrap this up. I just wanted to say it's been a distinct honor and pleasure to discuss this with you online. I would love the opportunity to do this again.
Yeah, I would love you to come onto my podcast. I think you'd be great.
Well, stay on the line after we sign off. Just stay on the line, and we'll wrap up, you and I together. But I'm dubbing you Mighty Marni Kinrys. Mighty Marni Kinrys. And thank you again so much for your time. I know it's very valuable, and again, it's been an honor. I am Dr. Sam Dubé, a.k.a. Super Sam Dubé, and I look forward to speaking with you again in the future. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is Marni, your personal wing girl. Can you tell us your website?
winggirlmethod.com.
winggirlmethod.com. We'll look out for you. Thanks again so much. Be safe, Marni, and look forward to speaking with you again in the future.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh,